Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Pokemon FireRed. In the last part we took care of the SS Anna and took out the Vermilion City Gym Leader Lieutenant Surge in the process. And now we're back here on Route 2 to trade an Abra I caught off screen back at Cerulean City to this person for their Mr. Mime. Now I'm getting this for a couple reasons. One is just a little bit further Pokedex completion because I do at least want to eventually get enough Pokemon to get all the items from Oak's Aids. But also because we got HM05 last part. And I need a Pokemon to teach that to, so it's not on my main team. Mr. Mime can learn Flash, so yeah. Mr. Mime is pure Psychic type at this point in the series. It would later become Psychic Fairy as of Gen 6. So that means at this point in the series, it's only weak to Dark, Ghost, and I think there's one other thing. Statistically, it's a very tanky Pokemon. It has a lot of special defense. But I don't recall it getting much of a moveset to take advantage of anything. It's okay, but it's not great. There are better Psychic types, as I've said before, in FireRed Leaf Green / Gen 1. With that, there's also one thing I forgot to do at the end of the last part that I technically meant to do, but oh well. I want to head back into Pewter City. Because if you were wandering around when you were there the first time, you have actually seen there was a cuttable tree near the museum, and now I actually want to go take care of that. This is technically a long-term thing that you don't have to do until, like, easily part 15 plus, but I want to take care of this now. I hope I have a right number there. Let's talk to this dude. Shh, listen, I need to share a secret with someone. I think this chunk of amber contains Pokemon DNA. It would be a shattering scientific breakthrough if Pokemon could be resurrected from it, but my colleagues just ignore what I have to say. So I have a favor to ask. I want you to get this examined at a Pokemon lab somewhere. And we get the old amber. Well, keep that along with us for a while. Also, this guy here will teach you Seismic Toss, which is a fighting type move that does damage relative to the target's level. For late game, it's a very powerful move, but right now, not the best. And even then, Zoe is going to learn that by the end of the part, even. Now we're back in Cerulean City, just went back to Viridian and then headed north, because you might remember we got the bike voucher a couple parts back. Oh, that's a bike voucher! Okay, here you go. Thank you, come back again sometime. Now we have the only button, the only key item you should ever really have registered on a regular basis, the bicycle. It moves fast. You can technically buy it, and by that I mean they say you can for just over $1 million, I think. But you can only hold a maximum of like 1 or 2 less money than that, so you can never actually buy it. And here's the thing, I actually can't tell if it's faster in FireRed Leaf Green than running, because the original Gen 1 didn't have a running shoes to begin with, and compared to main Gen 3 and Gen 4 onwards, the bike feels slower in this game. So I can't tell if that's my brain just playing tricks on me, or what. Either way, welcome to Route 9. Notable Pokemon you can find here, Rattata, Spearow, Ekans, Sandshrew, that's really it. That's a lot of what you can find on the northern half of Kanto, really, is just those. Mind you, we also haven't gotten to the point where we're going to be getting a lot of water Pokemon yet, so soon enough. Now, at this point, because the east of Vermilion is blocked by that sleeping Pokemon, and there's nowhere else we can really go back on the western half of the continent, or I guess the region, we now need to head this way though, because this is the only way left for us to reach another part of Kanto. On the wayside though, we do find this particular bug catcher who has another new Pokemon for us to fight. A couple parts ago, we fought Butterfree for the first time, and this is its counterpart, Beedrill, the final evolution of the Weedle line. Bug poison, so it's weak to Flying, Rock, Fire, and Psychic. It's got a decent attack stat from memory. I think its special defense is around the same. It's also decently fast, but for early game, Butterfree is the better bug type. Beedrill's still cool. I like its design better, honestly. But neither are great from, like, the next gym onwards. Fire type is more or less all you need, especially if you chose Charmander. And this playthrough in particular really just shows how different my playstyle has become in Pokemon over the years, because I think I brought this up back in my original LPs eons ago. But when I first played Pokemon, I was one of those players that only ever leveled up my starter. That ended with Gen 5 or so, I want to say. And because I had a hard time in a lot of the older games. And in that playstyle, I think my starter was already into their 40s of levels by this point. Which is just kind of ridiculous. Either way, time for another new Pokemon. This is, I think, the last notable bug chain that you can regularly find in Kanto. This is Venonat. Bug poison, so same weaknesses as Beedrill. Its stats are relatively balanced. By the time it evolves, I think it gains a special attack focus. And it's okay. I think it might be my overall favorite out of the 3 notable bug evolution chains in the game. But it's not my favorite bug type in Gen 1. We won't see that for a number of parts still. Also, I'm getting really tired of the Pokemon you can only encounter in North Kanto. You really are at this point in the game. Beyond your little trip in Vermilion and the SSN, you're really just fighting Sandshrews, Rattatas, maybe stage 1s of the starters, a lot of the same stuff. Again, that is the problem with Gen 1, though. It was the first. This camper does, or this picnicker rather, does have a new Pokemon, though. This is Meowth, and this matchup is familiar. Meowth is purely a normal type, which means only weak to fighting. For a stage 1 evolution, I think it's relatively fast, and it has a relatively rare ability in that it has the move Payday, which increases the output, I think it doubles it even, of money you get from trainer battles. So if you want to get one of these, which you can in the route just south of Cerulean, I would recommend it. It's not a bad normal type. Its evolution is also relatively fast, and I think it gains a decent boost in attack from my memory. Especially for the point you can find it, it'll probably already be evolved by the time you get to around this point anyway, depending on how you went about your leveling. Yeah, I gain a little bit more of a specialty in attack when it evolves. Notably, whenever I'm talking about the stats, I do have Bulbapedia up just so I can make sure I have all my information straight, but a lot of this is just based off my own experience with using Pokemon. There's seldom a Pokemon I think is outright bad, depending on how you use it, but even then, I'm just nicer to most Pokemon in general. There's seldom a Pokemon I would just call trash. Gen 2 has one of it. Its name is Sunkern. It's cute, but it does not do much. Because that is something I like about the Pokemon series, is while there are those that are definitively better due to the effort value and individual value system, every Pokemon has a potential to become very good with depending on how you synergize yourself. Also, I just realized I don't think I've talked about individual values, have I? I'll get into that when we get into the next dungeon, which is in the next couple minutes. First off, though, there's a couple of hidden berries here, and let's check out this particular Pokemon Center. This might be one of my favorite placements of a Pokemon Center in the series, because we got through a lot of trainers to get here, and we're about to go through one of the longer dungeons in the game. Also, I should note, we are technically on a different route at this point. This is Route 10, I believe? You can find Voltorbs and Spearows in the grass, as well as Ekans on FireRed and Sandshrews on Leaf Green. Oh, Kyle, I've been looking for you. It's me, one of the ever-present aides to Professor Oak. If your Pokedex has complete data on 20 species, I'm supposed to give you a reward from Professor Oak. He entrusted me with this Everstone, so let me ask you, have you gathered data on at least 20 kinds? No. The Everstone is a bit of an odd item that I don't see much of a purpose of, unless you're just trying to avoid pressing the B button on the evolution screen. Because what it does is that if a Pokemon's holding it, in the case its requirements for evolution are fulfilled, it won't evolve. I don't get it. I'm certain there's some uses for it. I just don't. Also notable, I did put Zoe into the box there for a little bit, just for time's sake. Welcome to Rock Tunnel. This place is dark. This is why we need flash. You can make it through perfectly fine without it, because you do have enough of a window to see around you at least. And while there's more dead ends to this place than Mount Moon, it's overall a more linear pathway. However, you might just want to try and avoid as many trainer battles. I don't, because that's experience points, and I want those. Time for a new Pokemon, though. The Pokemaniacs, by the way, I think just tend to use anything that's relatively cute. They tend to use ground and fire type from my memory, though. This is Cubone, pure ground type, which means it is weak to water, grass, and ice. This thing's pretty beefy in defense for a Stage 1 evolution. And if I recall correctly, its Stage 2 gets relatively high as well. You're able to catch one of these technically in the relatively near future, and if you're looking for a relatively defensive Pokemon, it's not a bad choice. Also, I ran out of Final Fantasy themes on my computer, so I'm moving on to other series, like Metal Gear Solid. Doesn't match at all, but you know me. I hope. Unless you're new and watching me for the first time, in which case, hello. How you doing? I'm Kyle. Welcome to my channel. I do a lot of random stuff. I swear a lot. Rock Tunnel, though, is easily one of the fan least favorites, and I can completely understand why, because this place is pretty tedious. And there's a lot of required Pokemon trainer battles in here, too, so it can be kind of slow, especially in PokeMMO, even when you have the layout of this place memorized, the boosted levels of basically every trainer mon means that you can be here for even longer. Didn't stop me from getting through it without Flash, because I just did not care to catch 10 kinds of Pokemon. Either way, I briefly mentioned individual values, though, or IVs. They're the equivalent of genes, sort of, in that each Pokemon you catch in the wild, the moment you catch it, has them determined, and they kind of outline the way that particular Pokemon can grow along certain stats. Like, I think the games often use the term potential to refer to them, as in they have a high individual value in HP, so they have a potentially high-end HP stat. There are ways to track this and ways to manipulate it around, particularly in the later games. It goes into a lot about breeding, which is too endlessly complex behind the scenes for me to really give a shit about, honestly. And when I'm of the mindset in games where, at least Pokemon games rather, where since I play them so casually, I don't really care about this kind of stuff. If you're going into competitive, it's very useful information to know, and I recommend looking into it in case you are someone who wants to get into competitive, which Sword and Shield, through its mechanics, makes very easy to do due to the bottle cap system, allowing you to use mints or herbs to change Pokemon natures, so on and so forth. Sword and Shield's very competitively friendly, and I'm very much a fan of that, even though I don't care about it, if that makes sense. Also, wait, I forget, have I mentioned natures yet? If I did, I think it was back in Malmoon. In fact, I think I briefly mentioned it. Just for, I guess, the completeness of data or information, there's a set of like 25-ish natures that Pokemon can have starting from Gen 3, and with the exception of like 5 of them, they each impact 2 of their stats, one in a negative fashion, one in a positive. For instance, I think it's Adamant increases their physical attack stat, but decreases their special attack. There's a whole game of trying to grind out or farm out the right natures for your Pokemon, which again, Sword and Shield changed because there's mints to change that stuff. And again, it only really matters in competitive, because while yes, you can use it to take into account brief stuff in casual playthrough or playing through the storyline, it's going to have such a minor effect on the way you play through the storyline that it's not worth knowing from my mind. Because I hear my friends who are more into competitive than me, way more, and they talk about, like, I had to farm out, like, what's like a modest nature. What's Pokemon they went for with that? I think it was a psychic type. I think it was Gardevoir, actually. And I guess that means it raises special attack in that case. It's just not worth my time, I feel, to go after that stuff because I just don't care about competitive. Because it's weird. If you know me in person, like for those I play Smash Brothers with, I can be kind of competitive, but I'm just there to have fun. I'm seldom going to give that much effort into RPG mechanics unless I'm going for like a higher difficulty, which Pokemon has never had a hard mode, so This hiker has something to note, though. He's going to have a new Pokemon for us to fight. This is Graveler. This is Geodude's evolution starting at level 25. Rock, ground type, weak to fighting, ground, steel, water, grass, and ice. That's 2 4x weaknesses to water and grass, by the way. It's very beefy in defense, but that's about it. Ground Rock isn't the best typing, despite a certain Pokemon we'll be seeing later on that might be joining my team. And its evolution that it gets later on via trade is not too spectacular either. Either way, because Zoe reached level 28, she is evolving into a Primeape, which is more or less just a more offensive Mankey. I also don't bother to learn it, arguably its iconic move, Rage, just because I don't care for it that much. It's still pure fighting type, which means it is weak to Flying, Psychic, and Fairy, and its attack stat has now been boosted, as well as its speed stat. Rage gets stronger every time they get hit in battle after they use it. I don't care. I think it's after they use it. I don't like it, so I don't use it. Also, that makes me realize I completely forgot to talk about the Bulbasaur we fought earlier. Shit. Bulbasaur is the grass starter, as you might remember from part 1. Weak to Flying, Fire, Psychic, and Ice due to its grass poison typing. Its very specially minded special attack and defense is pretty high for it. Out of the Gen 1 starters, it might be my least favorite, but it's still really cute. I just don't care for grass types that much in general. If there's a grass type on my team in any way, it's usually a sub-typing. I'll be real with you. Or at least it's one of 2 typings that I have other things in mind for poison subtypes, if I ever get one. Oh, and I just realized, I don't think I've talked about this. The Pokemon you can catch here in Rock Tunnel. You can catch Geodude, Zubats, Mankeys, Machops. You can find them in here, as well as Onyxes. And here on the bottom floor so far, you may have seen these little rocks that stand out a bit. We're going to be actually able to break those? I mean, I guess. Break those later on. And they can, when you break them, there's a chance they'll become Geodudes or Gravelers. You know, I chose this just because it was in my music files, but looking at this now, the Parasite Queen theme from Metroid Prime 1 is not a very fitting battle theme for Pokemon. I do stupid things sometimes. A lot of the time. Looking at the caves, though, something that surprises me about FireRed and Leaf Green, and Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, now that I think about it, is that they do a good job with their color palettes for the Game Boy Advance, especially at the era they were. Because I think both of these game types were released before the GBA SP came out. So they made good on making the colors stand out without being too washed out, as you can see in any of the Super Nintendo ports to the Game Boy Advance, now that I think about it. Because the lack of a backlit screen at the start really meant they had to make things stand out as much as possible. Mind you, I think there are patches to solve some of that for the Super Nintendo ports. Like, I know there's a version of Final Fantasy VI Advance out there which tries its best to mitigate that, as well as fix some of the sound issues, because emulators can do that stuff compared to the Game Boy Advance. It's just interesting to me, seeing fan efforts fix problems with games from a bygone era. Because, even though I love the Game Boy Advance, it had a lot of problems, including shovelware. Which, now I think it was kind of a Nintendo handheld thing into the DS, wasn't it? Never forget some of the Wii library, man. There are some weird games on that system. Either way, with that sign, we're finally free. The exit to Rock Tunnel is right here. Thank God. Also, all the trainers out here are optional, which I find odd. Mind you, they probably wanted you to have a way around this route without having to encounter any trainers because you just went through a long dungeon. And even briefly, you're going to see me go down south and use the Pokemon Center really quick because I do want to finish these trainers off now. I think that happens right about now? Yeah, I just went down south to use that Pokemon Center. No new Pokemon here, though, just experience points. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 9, we're going to explore Lavender Town. See you guys then.